Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you cut the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on last Thursday evening, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with us, 8 bottles of champagne were entered to have been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that always as a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often noticed in a married household, wine is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralising as that?
I believe it is a pleasant state, sir. I've very little knowledge of myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane, that will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what is the use of them? As a class, they seem to have no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest, Worthing.
Ah, Ernest, how are you? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshments at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
In the country? What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly dreadful. Never speak to one of them.
How meant you must amuse them. Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Oh, yes, definitely. I say, why these plates? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, it's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
Why ever not?
My dear fellow, it is the way you flirt with Gwendolyn. It's perfectly disgraceful. It's nearly as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn, and I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. You call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. Oh yes, it is romantic to be in love, but there definitely isn't anything romantic in a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I shall ever get married, I shall definitely try to forget that fact.
Oh, I have no doubt about that, my dear Algy. The divorce court was specially formulated for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no speculating on that subject, my dear fellow. Divorces were made in heaven. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Here, have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, you need not eat it as though you're going to eat at all. You act as though you're married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
May I ask why?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It's the great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give you my consent.
Your consent?
Yes, you don't seem to realise Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you shall have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily, Algy? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily. Cecily. No one by the name of Cecily.
Lane, bring me in that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Good heavens. Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all the time? I wish you'd told me. I've been going frantic about it. I've written several letters to Scotland Yard. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
My dear fellow, there is no good offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, now that I look at the inscription inside, I find it isn't yours after all.
What do you mean? Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And what do you mean by reading what's inside it? It's a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to make a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. Half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Oh, I'm quite well aware of that. But I'm not prepared to discuss modern culture with you. It's not the sort of thing one should talk of in private. Now give me that back.
Yes, this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was given by someone of the name Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily is my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming lady she is too. Lives down at Tunbridge Wells. Now give it back.
Yes, but why does your aunt call herself Little Cecily? If she is your aunt and lives in Tunbridge Wells. From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not. Surely that is a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. Now, give it back.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? I can't quite make it out. From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter whatever her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? Anyway, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
But you always told me it was Earnest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as though your name was Ernest. You're one of the most earnest-looking fellows I've ever seen in my entire life. It is perfectly absurd your saying your name isn't Earnest. Here, it's in your cart. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I shall keep this as proof that if you ever deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in the town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but this still does not account for the reason why your little Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, should call you her uncle. Come on, boy. You'd much better have the thing out at once.
Oh, don't talk like that. You sound exactly as if you were a dentist when you talk like that. It is a very vulgar thing to talk as if one were a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is what dentists always do. Now, come on, boy. Tell me the whole thing. And I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
Oh, I shall reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you would be kind enough to inform me why you are Jack in the country and Ernest in town.
Well, first produce my cigarette case.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation. And pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing at all improbable about my explanation. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a young boy, made me, in his will, guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who lives at my place in the country, under the guard of her admirable governess, Miss Prism, calls me her uncle, through motives of respect I can't possibly hope you to understand.
Where is this place in the country, by the way?
That is of no interest to you. You will never be invited there. And may I tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
Oh, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire in 2 separate occasions.
What do you mean by Bunbury?
Now, come on, boy. Tell me, why are you Jack in the country and Ernest in town?
Well, I will try and explain to you. But I doubt you'll understand. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all matters. And as a high moral tone cannot possibly be said to conduce very much to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother, by the name of Earnest, who lives at the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That is the truth, pure and simple.
The truth truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either. And modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave that to the people who haven't been to university. They do it so well in the daily newspapers. What you really are is a bumbrist. I was quite right in saying you were a bumbrist. You're one of the most advanced bumbrists I've ever known.
What do you mean?
You have invented a younger brother of the name Earnest, so that you're able to visit the town as often as you like. I, on the other hand, have invented a perfectly invaluable invalid of the name Bunbury, so that I am able to visit the country as often as I choose. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than nearly a week.
I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more as to not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday evening, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. And in the second place, I'm always treated as one of the family, and either sent down with no woman or two. And in the third place, I know perfectly well who she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband over the dinner table. That is not very nice. Indeed, it isn't even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase nowadays. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly disgraceful. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed and secret bumbrist, I naturally want to talk to you about it. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a bumbrist. And I think I shall kill Ernest, if Gwendolen accepts me. In fact, I think I shall kill him anyway. Cecily is a little too fond of him. It is rather a bore. And I suggest you do the same thing with your Mr... Oh, your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to be extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
If Gwendolen accepts me, I shan't want to know your Mr. Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realise that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear fellow, is the message that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's never easy to be anything nowadays. There is so much beastly competition about. Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get out of the way for 10 minutes so that you have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
Well, I suppose so, if you really want to.
Yes, you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is extremely shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
Oh, indeed, Miss Fairfax. You are quite perfect.
Oh, I hope that I'm not, for that would leave very little room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions. I'm sorry if we are a little late, dear Algernon, but I thought to manage to call on the dear Lady Harbury. I haven't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come here? Thanks, Ma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane. Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were none left at the market, sir. I went twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane, that will do. I'm very distressed, Aunt Augusta, that there is no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure nowadays.
Yes, I hear her hair is so quite gold and green.
It was so change his colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with dear Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman, so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them both.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. You would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
That is a great bore, and I need hardly say a great disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram in to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that this Mr. Bunbury decided whether he is going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the matter is quite absurd. And nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Life is the primary duty of life. I keep telling this to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailments go. Well, I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury not to have a relapse on such a day, for I rely on you to organise my music for me. It is to be my last reception, and one with something to encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everybody has said whatever they had to say, which in most cases probably wasn't much.
Yes, Aunt Augusta, I shall have a word with him, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you that he'll be all right by next Saturday evening. But the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, nobody listens. And if one plays bad music, nobody talks. As I run over the programme I've drawn up, if you would be kind enough to step into the next room for a moment.
That is very thoughtful of you, Algernon. I'm sure the music will be delightful after a few expurgations. French music I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think it improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me. Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing, for whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else. That makes me so nervous.
In fact, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
Miss Fairfax, I would like to be allowed to take advantage of your aunt's temporary absence.
Oh, I certainly advise you do so. Ma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I have met you, I have admired you more than any other girl I have ever met since I met you.
Oh, I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I wish that in public, at any rate, you'd be more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. In fact, it's constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. Even the moment Algernon mentioned to me that he had a friend named Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling. You don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But do you mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know. But supposing it was something else, couldn't you love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the facts of real life as we know them.
To speak quite candidly, darling, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It produces vibrations.
Well, honestly, I think there are lots of much nice names. I think, Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack. Very at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they were all very plain, without exception. Besides, Jack's notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman married to a man named John, for she may never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only real safe name is Earnest.
I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes. Surely you know I love you, and you led me to believe that you weren't completely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject's not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
Oh, I think it's an admirable opportunity, and I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen,
Yes, Mr. Worthing, you have something to say to me?
you know perfectly well what I have to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling, but how long have you been about it? I'm afraid you've had very little practice in how to propose.
But my own love, surely you know I've never loved anyone but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Ernest, what wonderfully blue eyes you have. They're quite blue, and I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recruit posture. This is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must wait to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged, I or Lord Bracknell shall inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am going about these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, shall wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma?
In the carriage, Gwendolen. Gwendolen, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton. We were together, in fact. However, I am quite willing to enter your name should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, Lady Bracknell. I must admit I do smoke.
I am pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that when a man desires to get married, he should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am glad to hear it. I disapprove of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious threat to the upper classes, and probably lead to acts of violence in those they spare. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is not unsatisfactory. What between the duties expected from one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land is to be either a profit or pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I own a house in the country, of course. That has some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't make any profit out of that. In fact, as far as I can tell, the poachers are the only people who make any profit out of it at all.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that can be cleared up afterwards. I presume you have a townhouse. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen's could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Yes, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I want at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability or character. What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I knew there was something. However, that can easily be altered.
What, the fashion of the side?
Both, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Ah, they can't as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate.
married, I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Belding, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some worth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I don't know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of a charitable nature, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, as he had a first-class ticket for the place in his pocket. Worthing is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman, who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort, find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag!
Yes, a somewhat large leather handbag with handles to it. A perfectly ordinary handbag.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. I confess, Mr. Worthing, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate, bred in a handbag, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you knew what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, and has probably indeed been used for that very purpose. But it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
Well, what would you suggest I do? I need hardly mention I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible. And to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
How would you suggest I do that? I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my cloakroom at home. I think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I, or Lord Bracknell, would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Good day! Oh, do stop whistling that ghastly tune, Algie. How idiotic you are.
Didn't he go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know this is the way she has. Gwendolyn is always refusing people. It is most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. It's her mother that's the problem. I've never met such a gorgon in all my life. Well, I've never met a gorgon in all my life. But she is a monster, without being a myth, which I think is very unfair. I'm sorry, Algie. I shouldn't talk about your relatives in this way in front of you.
Don't be absurd. I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only things that make me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people without the remotest knowledge about how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
Well, I'm not going to argue about it, and that is nonsense.
It isn't.
I've already told you, I won't argue about it. You want to argue about everything.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
Good heavens. If I thought that, I'd shoot myself. I say, you don't think Gwendolyn could grow up to be like her mother in, say, 150 years, do you?
I'm afraid all women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, that's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and as true as any observation in civilised life should be.
Oh, I am sick to death of clever people. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. Everyone is clever. It is becoming quite a public nuisance. I wish to goodness there were some fools left.
Well, we have got some fools.
Really? I should dearly like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
Oh, fools.
By the way, you told Gwendolyn the truth about you being Jack in the country and Earnest in town.
Well, the truth isn't the sort of thing you tell a sweet, intelligent, cultured girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have on how to behave towards women.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her, if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
And what about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
I have already decided his fate. He will be dead by the end of the week. I shall say he died abroad, in Paris, of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy, don't they? It's quite sudden.
Yes, but my dear fellow, it's hereditary. You see, it runs in the families. You're much better off saying severe chill.
You're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well, that's settled. Ernest shall die abroad, in Paris, of a severe chill. That's him out of the way, and a very good thing too.
I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your brother. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, not at all. I am pleased to say that Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl. She goes for long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays absolutely no attention to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet Miss Cecily.
I shall take great care to make sure you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just turned 18?
Well, one doesn't just blurt these things out. I'm sure within half an hour of meeting, Gwendolyn and Cecily will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first.
Oh, that is nonsense.
Now, if we want to go to good seat at Willis's, we really must go and get dressed. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
I'm hungry.
I haven't known you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Go to the theatre?
No. I hate looking.
Oh, let us go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
Well, let us take a trot round the Empire at 10.
No, I hate listening. It's so silly.
Then what shall we do then?
Nothing.
Well, it's extremely hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word,
Would you kindly turn your back? I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
I don't think I can allow this, Gwendolyn.
And do you always adopt such a strict immoral attitude towards life? You're not quite old enough to do that. Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Ma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, there is nothing she can possibly do to alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, my darling Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibres of my nature. In your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
Where?
Hertfordshire.
There is a brief social service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate, but that will require serious consideration. How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
I will communicate with you daily. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I have already.
Then you may also ring the bell.
May I escort you to your carriage, Miss Fairfax?
Certainly.
I will be escorting Miss Fairfax in the carriage.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bumbering.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday, so you can put up all my dress clothes, all my Bunbury suits and my smoking jacket.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sweet, charming, cultured girl for you. The only girl I have ever wanted to marry. What are you looking so amused about?
Oh, I'm just a little worried about Bunbury, that's all.
If you're not very careful, Your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape one day.
I love scrapes. They are the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. No one ever talks any sense nowadays.
Nobody ever does.
He is so serious, I think he cannot be quite well. Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his relative demeanour is especially to be commended, and one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility. I suppose that is why Evelyn looks a little bored when we three together. Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality will be out of place in this conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother. I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much. I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not quite sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people as the moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put your diary away, Cecily. I don't really see why you should keep a diary at all. I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I did not write them down, I should probably forget all about them. Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry around with us. Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels Moody sends us. Do not speak slightly of the 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days. Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much. The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means. I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published? Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless. But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden. Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
How are we this morning? Miss Prism Raj as well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble. Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about headache. No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
Like history, all I taught us stuff to be Miss Prism to people, I'd hang up on the list. I spoke with Forrest. My next was all fees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, is not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend the Sunday in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment. That's why all house is unfortunate young man as Forrest seems to be. But it's not disturb a jury and a pupil any longer.
Juria, my name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical illusion, merely. Not from the pagan authors. I shall see you both no doubt Stevens.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. I find I'll have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go across the school together.
Cecily, you read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee, you may omit, is a little what too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic sides. Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He seemed very anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Worthing to come out here, and I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
Never really met any wicked person before. I feel quite frightened. I'm so afraid he'll look just like everybody else. He does.
And you are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You must be under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be bad and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I'm not so sure you should be so proud of that. I'm sure it must have been very pleasant for you.
It is pleasant to being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment, but I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know how important it is, of course, not to keep a business engagement, if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you should wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfits. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think he will require neckties. He's going to send you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I've received of the next world and Australia have not been particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I would like you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Then would you mind my reforming myself?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You were looking a little worse.
Well, that's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marichal now?
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you're like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to say such things to me. Miss Prism never does.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
A snare that any sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. You're too much alone, dear Dr. Churchville. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A woman throat, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realise, dear Doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
Is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
Not that I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing, this is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
Yes, I have returned rather earlier than I had expected. Dr. Chatterbow, I trust you are well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garden boy has not taken some terrible plan.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Oh, Robert Earnest. Dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I assume my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation to know that you're always most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had his many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris. I received a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel last night.
What was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
That wasn't perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to drafts. Will the interpreter take this?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at last. You would no doubt wish me to take some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the man of the audience read that to almost anything. Joyful, but in the present case, distressing. I reach at the harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, and days of humiliation and festival days. The last time I delivered was in the cathedral. It was a charity ceremony. On behalf of the prevention of discontent among the upper orders, the bishop who was present was much struck by some of the knowledge I drew.
Ah, yes. You mentioned christenings, didn't you, my dear doctor? I suppose you know how to christen all right, don't you? I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often tried to speak to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Is there any offence to your interest, Mr. Worthing? Your brothers, I believe, are married, isn't it?
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
Yes. But it is not for any infant, my dear doctor, although I am very fond of children. No. It is I who wish to be christened. This afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already?
I don't remember anything about it.
Then, have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know whether the thing would bother you at all. You don't think I'm a little too old, do you?
Not at all. A sprinkling and deeply immersion in adults is perfectly normal practice.
Immersion?
I need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is always necessary, or I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. That's what our would ceremony before.
Oh, I thought I might pop round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform that time. Innocent twins occurred recently on the outlying cottages on the estate. Poor Jamie Carter, most hard-working man.
I don't think that it would be much fun to be christened with other babies. It would be so childish. Would 5:30 do?
It was splendid. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer on the house of sorrow. I would merely beg that you be not too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials, often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind. Uncle Jack, oh, I am pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them. Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache. Well, I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother. Your brother, Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
It's a very joyful time.
After we've all been resigned of his loss, his sudden return seems to me particularly distressing.
My brother Ernest, here, I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd.
Brother John and I have come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here is perfectly disgraceful, and he knows jolly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. And he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course I admit that most of the faults were on my side, but I think that Brother John's coldness towards me has been particularly painful. I expected a much more enthusiastic welcome, considering it was the first time I had ever come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, all right. But this is the last time I ever shall.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see, sir? A perfect reconciliation. I think we don't leave the two brothers together.
Certainly you will come with us. Certainly, Miss Helen. The task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments. I feel very happy.
Algy. You scoundrel! You must leave this place at once. I don't allow Bunbury here.
I've put Mr. Worthing's luggage in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
Mr. Worthing's luggage. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart. Mr. Earnest has been called back to town.
What a frightful lie you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Oh, yes, you have.
Well, I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest degree.
Oh, I can quite see that.
Cecily is a darling.
I will not have you talking of Miss Cardew in that way. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for someone who is actually staying with you in your house as a guest. I feel grotesque.
You're not staying in my house as a guest for a week or anything else. You will be gone by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't go while you're in deep mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in deep mourning, you'd stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
I suppose so. If you are not too long, I've never seen anyone take so long to dress with such little result.
Well, at least it's better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct is an outrage. And your presence in my house is utterly absurd. But as you must leave by the 4:05 train and you're not going to be late for it, I will go and get changed. And may I just say that your Bunbury here has not been a great success.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily and that is everything. But I must go and see her on arrangements for another Bunbury. There she is.
I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to apart from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I say quite frankly that you seem to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Earnest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to see it, may I?
Oh, no. It is simply a very young girl's records of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, don't stop, Earnest. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Earnest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting.
tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Of course, you silly boy. Why, we have been engaged for 3 months.
3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How on earth have we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very bad and wicked, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Earnest.
When was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I decided to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you. The next day, I bought this ring in your name. This is the bangle, the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy you this? Very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Earnest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. And here is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
Oh, sweet darling, I didn't write you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Earnest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do let me read them.
Oh, possibly. It would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
When was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break off our engagement? What had I done? I had done nothing, Cecily. I am greatly distressed that you broke off our engagement, particularly when the weather remained so charming.
It would hardly have been a very serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. Besides, I forgave you before the week was out.
Perfect as you are.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. The name seems to inspire one with absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Do you mean to say that if I had some other name, you couldn't love me?
But what a name.
Oh, any name. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
I can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's a very nice name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. In fact, half of the chaps who get into the bankruptcy course are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, do you mean to say if my name was Algie, could you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I feel sorry to say that I could not give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the rites and ceremonies of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must go and see him on a most important christening. I mean, most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Seeing as we've been engaged since the 14th of February, and that I only met you for the first time today, I think it is rather hard of you to leave me for such a long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I do like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Hey, Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business in Fairfax States.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went into the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose you're one of the many good elderly women who are associated with some of Uncle Jack's philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are associated in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. I'm sure we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
And nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
And that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, I am glad to say Papa is entirely unknown. It is quite as it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for a man. And once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, and I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Then your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prison, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I've liked you since I met you, but I feel bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you are, well, perhaps a little older than you may seem to be, not quite so very alluring in appearance. If I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I feel that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candour, I wish you were fully 42, more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's a very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be almost as impossible as deception. But even men of the noblest moral character are extremely susceptible to the influences of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies you with many facts, many examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seemed almost distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if a cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Besides, you're quite sure it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is your guardian?
quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make it a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
There must be some slight error, for I am engaged to Mr. Earnest Worthing. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary, and I should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it has caused you any possible disappointment, but it seems I have prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it has caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall see it my duty to rescue him, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than moral duty for one to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It's quite obvious our social spheres being widely different.
Shall I leave you as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many nice walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I'm not sure I should like that, for I hate crowds.
Suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here as the people are in London.
I don't know how anybody exists in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy is suffering from it a great deal at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I've heard. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you, the detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Bread and butter.
Bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. Now it asks most distinctly for bread and butter. You have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
I felt from the first that you were false and deceitful, and I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighbourhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn,
A moment. May I ask if you're engaged to be married to this young lady?
to dear little Cecily? Why, of course not. What could have put such a silly idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own one.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Good heavens. Gwendolyn?
Yes, to good heavens, I mean,
gentleman who is now holding your hand is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon? Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
And is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But yes, my name is John. It's been John for years.
My poor, wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There's just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
Oh, an admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest at present? For we are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance for us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Cecily, Gwendolyn, it is very difficult for me to speak the truth, as I have never been placed in such a painful position before. But the truth is, I have no brother Ernest. I have never had a brother Ernest, and I don't intend to have a brother Ernest in the future.
No brother at all?
No,
Not any brother of any kind?
none, not even of any kind.
It seems that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in.
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
I suppose this ghastly state of affairs is what you call bunburying, is it?
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury has been too.
Well, you have absolutely no right to Bunbury here.
That's absurd. One has the right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. All serious Bunburyists know that.
Serious Bunburyist?
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be very serious on Bunbury. What you are serious about, I haven't the slightest idea. About everything I should fancy, you have an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small pleasure I get out of this whole sordid affair is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to nip down to the country as often as you liked, will you, dear Algie?
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear off to London quite so frequently now as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I think you're taking in a sweet, innocent, sensible girl like Cecily is very inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defence in your taking in such a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my own cousin.
Well, that is none of your business.
Well, if it was my business, I certainly wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only stockbrokers do that, and then at dinner parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we are in this terrible situation, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One must only eat muffins quite calmly, and that is the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that can solve me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything but food and drink. At this present moment, I am unhappy. That is why I am eating muffins. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, you needn't eat them all in that greedy way.
Jack, I really wish you'd have some tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man may be allowed to eat his own muffins in his own garden.
Jesus said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you to eat muffins under the circumstances. That is a completely different thing.
Nevertheless, the muffins remain the same.
Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea. What? I certainly won't go without having some dinner. I never go without my dinner. It's absurd. No one ever does go without their dinner. Oh, except the vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble on a most important christening under the name of Earnest at 6:15.
The sooner you give up that stupid idea, my dear fellow, the better. I myself have already made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30 And naturally, I will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. Besides, I have every right to be christened. There is absolutely no evidence I ever have been, and I should think it very unlikely. So does Dr. Chasuble. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
Ah, yes, but you have been christened, and that's the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. And if you are not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I think it's rather dangerous you venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You need hardly forget that someone very closely to you at present was very nearly carried off this week in Paris with a severe chill.
But you yourself said the severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, but science is making wonderful improvements nowadays. Jack, you're at the muffins again. I really wish you wouldn't. I just said it was, I was particularly fond of muffins.
Why don't you go? I've already asked you to go. Why can't you just leave?
I certainly won't go without having my tea. Anyway, there is still one muffin left.
Muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Could you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
The most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
Oh, I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the important thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it so that you could come up to town to visit me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
Oh, I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for general scepticism. Both their explanations seem quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's, and that seems to have the stamp of the truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, in matters of grave importance. True, there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. But which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as others. Will you take account from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. When it comes to matters of self-sacrifice, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling,
Darling,
Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
merely that I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young or physical weakness in the old. The price of my daughter's sun-flight by the just today was something I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed it once by a lover's train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Team on Poet Eden. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him with anyone. I will consider it wrong. But of course, you must clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. Alas, my God's Algernon. Algernon?
yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your intimate friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? Oh no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he a victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he was well punished in his mobility.
No, I mean, the doctors found out he could not live. So that is what I mean by he was exploded. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have a great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. However, I am glad now that he has made at the last some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a peculiar and necessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
Cecily and I are engaged to be married.
Pardon me.
Mr. Lord Brinkman and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything particularly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me to be particularly above the proper average the statistics have laid down for our gardens. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the large railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any persons or families whose origin was ominous.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, NB.
Ah, 3 addresses. That always inspires confidence, even in tradesmen. But what profile their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court records of that period, Lady Bracknell. They are, of course, open to your inspection.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. A firm with the very highest position in the profession. Indeed, I am told that one of Markby's is to be seen occasionally at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
Well, that is very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both German and English varieties.
A life crowded with incidents, I think, though somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I myself do not approve of premature experiences. Come now, we have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask
about £130,000 in the funds. That is all, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
Mr. Worthing. £130,000, and in funds. Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady. Now that I've looked at her, few girls of the present day have really any solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of services. Come here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as though nature might have left it. But that can easily be altered. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a rather marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, own husband didn't know her.
Yes, and after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Turn around, sweet child. No, the side view was what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points of our age are want of principle and in want of profile. The chin a little higher, star large, it depends on the way the chin is worn. It is worn very high at the moment. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world. And I don't give tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who cannot get into it do that. But of course, dear, you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. Indeed, when I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I did not dream for a moment of allowing that to get in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
You may kiss me, Cecily.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I think the marriage will take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I do not approve of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Forgive me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but I am Miss Cardew's ward, and until she comes of age, she cannot marry without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may also say ostentatiously, eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me to speak about your nephew in this way, but I'm afraid I have doubts about Algernon's moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful. My nephew Algernon. Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there can be no possible doubt on the matter, Lady Bracknell. Earlier today, while I was away in London on a matter of romance, Algernon gained entrance to my house under the false pretenses of being my brother. Once inside, he drank, I have just been informed by my butler, a whole pint bottle of my Perrier Juillet Brut 89 wine, which I was specially saving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, in the course of the afternoon, he managed to alienate the affections of my only ward. Subsequently, he stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more marvellous is that he knew from the start that I have no brother. I have never had a brother, and I don't intend to have a brother in the future of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very kind of you. But under the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew cannot marry without my consent until she is 35. That consent I decline to give.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who remain 35 out of their own free choice for years. Lady Docton is an instance of point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40. many years ago now. I do not see why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and even waiting to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what shall be done?
I don't know, Mr. Mulgrave.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the decision is entirely in your own hands. As soon as you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will gladly let your nephew form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Come here with Miss 5806 train for Miss Anymore might expose to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand there will be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I'm afraid, as things stand, they wouldn't be of much practical use to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I agree to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They say that a heretical view is the Anabaptists. These are completely refuted in form of public sermons. As your present move seems to be one particularly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I've just been informed by the Puritan that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for the vestry.
Miss Prism, did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I'm on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is most cultivated of ladies, and a very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has for the last 3 years been Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see you at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
Dick, Canon, I've been waiting for you in the vestry for an hour and 3/4.
Prism, come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Square, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was found in a remote corner of Bayswater. But the baby was not there. Where is that baby, Prism?
Lady Bracknell, I think it's shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I intended to place the manuscript of work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But what did you do with the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, it is of no small importance of me to know. What did you do with the handbag that contained that infant?
I left it in the cloakroom at one of the larger railway stations in London.
Yes, but what railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, will you wait for me here?
If you're not too long, I'll wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Grant? I dare not even to suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of higher position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They hardly consider it.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Very emotional.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish you would arrive at a conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes! Here is the injury it received through an upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is a stain caused by an explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I'd forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm so happy to have it so unexpectedly returned to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Nor was the story in that handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
I cannot pretend that this is not a hard, harsh blow. But after all, who am I to cast stones against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one rule for men and another for women? I forgive you, Mother!
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who could tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell. I don't want to seem too inquisitive, but would you mind telling me, who am I?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother. Then I have a brother after all. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted me? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel. You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not until today, old boy, I admit. Though I was a little out of practice.
My own one? But what own are you? What is your name now that you've become someone else?
Yes, I had quite forgotten. I suppose your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then it had better be cleared up at once. Lady Bracknell. Aunt Augusta. At the time Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened after all. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's name?
I cannot at the moment recall the gentleman's name, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was a result of marriage and the Indian climate and other such things.
Algy, can't you remember what our father's Christian name was?
Oh, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
army lists of the period, would it not?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. Though I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The military directories of the last 40 years are here. Oh, these delightful records should have been my constant study. Now, let me see. M. Jones. Malum. Maxbum. Magley. Oh, what ghastly names they all have. Oh, Markby. Mixby. Mobbs. Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain. Lieutenant Colonel. Colonel. General, 1869. Christian names. Earnest John. Then I was called Earnest after all. I mean, naturally my name is Earnest. How could you have ever doubted me?
Yes, I remember now that Jones' Christian name was Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest, I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, but I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia, Frederick at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta. This is the first time in my life I have realised the vital importance of being earnest.
as in the usual way that we do things here, the whole thing has actually been run back here by the pupils. There's not a member of staff anywhere at the back there. They've done everything. And I also have a great deal of admiration and also a lot of thanks to the people up there and up there who have helped us. So could we give them